Track 1. In this conversation, Anna introduces Travels with Charley by John Steinbeck to David. They discuss Steinbeck's journey across America with his dog, Charley, and how the book is a mix of travelogue, memoir, and social commentary about the changes in 1960s America.
Have you read Travels with Charley by John Steinbeck?
No, I haven't. What's it about?
It's about Steinbeck's road trip across the U.S. with his dog, Charley. He wanted to explore the country and understand its people.
That sounds fascinating. So, it's a travelogue?
Yes, but it's also part memoir and part social commentary. He observes how America was changing in the 1960s.
Interesting. What kind of changes did he notice?
He noticed a lot of cultural shifts, like the rise of suburban living and how people's attitudes were evolving. It's very insightful.
I bet traveling with his dog made the journey even more unique.
Definitely. Charley adds a lot of charm to the story. He's like Steinbeck's travel companion and helps keep the tone light even when things get serious.
That sounds like a good mix of serious and light moments. Is it more about the journey or the destinations?
It's really about both. Steinbeck writes a lot about the landscapes, but he's more interested in the people he meets along the way.
I like that balance. Would you recommend it for someone who enjoys road trips?
Absolutely. If you love road trips and want a deeper understanding of America in the 60s, it's a must-read.
I'm adding it to my list.
You won't regret it. It's both relaxing and thought-provoking.
Track 2. In this conversation, Lynn introduces In Patagonia by Bruce Chatwin to Min. They discuss Chatwin's unique style, his journey through the remote region of Patagonia, and how the book blends travel, history, and encounters with fascinating people.
Have you read In Patagonia by Bruce Chatwin?
No, but I've heard it's a classic travel book. What's it about?
It's about his journey through Patagonia, a remote region in South America. Chatwin explores its landscapes, history, and meets all kinds of interesting people.
That sounds fascinating. Is it more of a travel guide or a personal story?
It's more of a mix. It's not a guidebook, but it's full of his observations and experiences. He also dives into legends and stories of the region.
So, it's more about the people and culture than just the place.
Exactly. He meets a lot of unique characters, and he's very curious about the history of Patagonia. He weaves those stories into his journey.
I've heard the writing style is different from other travel books. Is that true?
Yes, Chatwin has a unique, almost poetic style. He jumps from one topic to another, so it's not always linear, but that's part of the charm.
I like the sound of that. Does he describe the landscapes well?
Very much so. He paints Patagonia as this wild, mysterious place. His descriptions make you feel like you're right there with him.
Sounds like a good book for anyone who loves adventure and history.
Absolutely. If you like books that take you off the beaten path, this one's perfect.
I'll have to pick it up soon.
Track 3. In this conversation, Emma introduces Alive, the story of the Andes survivors by Piers. Read to Tom. They discuss the tragic 1972 plane crash in the Andes and how the survivors faced extreme conditions to stay alive. The conversation explores themes of survival, resilience, and the difficult decisions the survivors had to make.
Have you read Alive by Piers Reed?
Yes, I did. It's an incredible story of survival.
It's about that plane crash in the Andes, right?
Yes, it's the true story of a rugby team whose plane crashed in the mountains in 1972.
I heard they were stranded for over 2 months. How did they survive?
It's really shocking. They had to face extreme cold, hunger, and no help. To survive, they were forced to make very difficult decisions like eating the bodies of those who had died.
That must have been a heartbreaking choice.
It was, but it's a story about survival and human resilience. The way they managed to keep hope alive in such a desperate situation is amazing.
It must have been tough, physically and mentally. How did they finally get rescued?
After 72 days, 2 of the survivors managed to hike through the mountains to find help. They found a Chilean shepherd who alerted authorities.
Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing how they made it through such harsh conditions.
Yes, it's a very intense read, but also inspiring. It shows how far humans will go to survive.
I should definitely read it. It sounds like a story of incredible endurance.
You won't regret it. It's both a tragic and uplifting story at the same time.
Track 4. In this conversation, introduces The Great Railway Bazaar by Paul Theroux to Nam. They discuss Theroux's fascinating train journey through Europe, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia, exploring different cultures, landscapes, and people along the way. The conversation highlights how Theroux captures the essence of travel and adventure.
Have you ever read The Great Railway Bazaar by Paul Theroux?
No, I haven't. What's it about?
It's a classic travel book. Theroux takes a long train journey through Europe, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia.
That sounds amazing. Does he write about his experiences on the trains?
Yes, he describes the people he meets, the landscapes he sees, and the cultures he encounters. The trains themselves are a big part of the story too.
Does he travel on different types of trains?
Absolutely. He travels on luxury trains and simple, crowded ones. The variety of trains adds to the adventure.
How does he capture the different cultures?
Theroux has a keen eye for detail. He writes about the differences in food, clothing, languages, and the way people behave in each country.
That's interesting. Does he focus more on the journey or the destinations?
It's more about the journey. Theroux is fascinated by the experience of travel itself, the people he meets, and the stories that unfold on the trains.
Sounds like a great book for people who love travel and adventure.
Definitely. If you're into long journeys and discovering new places, you'll enjoy it.
I'll have to check it out. Thanks for the recommendation.
No problem, happy reading.
Track 5. In this conversation, Lynn tells Koa about South by Sir Ernest Shackleton. They discuss Shackleton's heroic Antarctic expedition, the challenges his crew faced when their ship, the Endurance, got trapped in ice, and how they miraculously survived. The conversation highlights Shackleton's extraordinary leadership and survival skills.
Have you read South by Sir Ernest Shackleton?
No, but I've heard about it. Isn't it about his Antarctic expedition?
Yes, it's his account of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition in 1914.
That's the one where his ship, the Endurance, got stuck in the ice, right?
Exactly. They were trapped for months and the ship eventually sank.
How did they survive after that?
Shackleton led his crew across the ice and then sailed in lifeboats to a remote island. It was an incredible feat of leadership and survival.
That sounds intense. Did they all make it out alive?
Yes, amazingly. Every single crew member survived despite the extreme conditions.
Shackleton must have been an incredible leader.
He was. His ability to keep his men motivated and hopeful, even in the darkest times, is truly inspiring.
I think I'll give it a read. Sounds like a powerful story.
You should. It's one of the greatest adventure stories ever told.
Track 6. In this conversation, introduces 7 Pillars of Wisdom by Thomas Edward Lawrence to Tuan. They discuss Lawrence's experiences during the Arab Revolt in World War I, his deep connection with Arab leaders, and his poetic descriptions of the desert and its people. The conversation highlights the book's unique blend of history, adventure, and philosophy.
Have you heard of 7 Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence?
Yes, it's about Lawrence's role in the Arab Revolt during World War I, right?
Exactly. Lawrence was a British officer, and the book is his personal account of his experiences in the Middle East.
I've heard it's not just about war but also about the culture and landscape of the desert.
That's true. Lawrence describes the desert in such a poetic way. He captures the beauty of the land, the people, and the tribes he worked with.
Was he really close to the Arab leaders?
Yes, he became very close to them, especially Prince Faisal. He played a key role in organizing the Arab forces against the Ottoman Empire.
Did he write about the battles in detail?
Yes, but he also focused on strategy and the psychological aspects of warfare. He was fascinated by guerrilla tactics and the power of unconventional warfare.
It sounds like a mix of history, adventure, and philosophy.
Exactly. That's why it's such a unique book. It's not just a war memoir but also a reflection on leadership, loyalty, and identity.
I'll have to read it. It seems like a deep and insightful book.
You won't regret it. It's one of the best books on both war and culture.
Track 7. In this conversation, Mai and Long discuss Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, a gripping account of the 1996 Mount Everest disaster. They talk about the sudden storm that caused the tragedy, Krakauer's personal experiences, and the dangerous reality of high-altitude climbing.
Have you read Into Thin Air by John Krakauer?
Yes, I did. It's about the 1996 Mount Everest disaster, right?
Exactly. Krakauer was part of a climbing team, and the book is his first-hand account of the tragedy.
I remember reading how the weather changed so suddenly. It must have been terrifying.
Yes, the storm came out of nowhere, trapping several climbers near the summit. Many didn't make it back.
Krakauer must have felt so helpless, seeing everything unfold.
He did. He even questioned whether climbing Everest was worth the risk after what happened.
Were there any survivors from his team?
Yes, but not everyone. The story shows how unpredictable and dangerous the mountain can be, even for experienced climbers.
It's incredible how something as beautiful as Everest can be so deadly.
Exactly. The book really makes you respect the power of nature and the risks involved in high-altitude climbing.
I can see why it's such a popular read. It's not just an adventure story, it's about survival and human endurance.
Definitely. It's intense but really worth reading.